Wardrobe for the Bass Tour Anglers podcast provided by Koppel Outfitters. Go have an adventure. Visit them online at www.koppeloutfitters.com and on social media at Koppel Outfitters. Well, get those life vests zipped in clips, strap down those rods, and stash away those tackle bags because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers podcast. Thanks for being with us today. Tactacam fisheye cameras make this podcast possible. Tactacam. This is the company that offers high-resolution action cameras for about half what the other guys charge. We are proud to announce that we are now the Western representative for Ducket Fishing. You know these guys, the strongest pro staff in all of bass fishing. If you have any questions about the Ducket Fishing lineup of pro-driven products, send us a DM on Instagram or go to our website, basstoanglerspodcast.com, and send us an email. We'll get that answer to you immediately. If you're new here, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and send us a comment if you're so inclined.
Oh, that's exactly where I caught that one last one too. Right on the top of that white spot.
Our guest today has a storied collegiate career, having won numerous events during his time at the University of Oregon. He's fished the Major League Fishing Pro Circuit since 2019 and finished 6th in Angler of the Year points in 2020. He has qualified for the Major League Fishing title event, and he's regarded as one of the top up-and-coming pros on the tour today. You can find him on Instagram and YouTube by looking up Jacob Wall Fishing. Jacob, welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Keith. I'm excited to chat and figure some stuff out about each other. I'm excited to talk to you.
Absolutely. So when I was doing my research for this, I looked up your resume and I saw Jacksonville as your hometown. I see the Gambler patch on your jersey. I think, oh, there's another Jacksonville, Florida person, and lo and behold, it's not Jacksonville, Florida. It's that other hotbed of bass fishing, Jacksonville, Oregon.
Yeah, I'm from Jacksonville, Oregon, which is a smaller town on the other side of the country, not Jacksonville, Florida. I am with Gambler. I actually met Mikey Balls. He's got a YouTube channel, and he and I kind of hit it off, and I got to talking with him, and that's sort of how I got to work with Gambler. But yeah, originally from Jacksonville, Oregon, which is Southern Oregon, Medford area. Not really well known for bass fishing. It's more well known for salmon, steelhead, trout fishing, that kind of stuff. But I got into bass fishing at a young age, just watching it on television, and it intrigued me that it was a little bit more fast paced than salmon and steelhead fishing, and I liked that about bass fishing, and that intrigued me to pursue doing it more and more. And then it basically turned into just a hobby, which or the hobby turned into more than a hobby. It turned into wanting to compete. I've always been very competitive. I did, sports in school and So I always wanted to compete any way I could. And bass fishing, I realized you could do that too. And so that's sort of how it all transitioned. Being from the West Coast, how I got into it. Like, long story short, kind of deal. I just it intrigued me how fast paced it was. I didn't necessarily love being stuck sitting there either drifting, for salmon or steelhead or whatever it might be. Salmon and steelhead fishing is just a lot more slow pace. It can be really exciting when you hook one, but you're fishing for a lot less bites most of the time, which wasn't my cup of tea.
On your resume, I noticed that you said you competed in the BASS Casting Kids program, and you and my son are the same age or a year or so difference. And my son was the California State casting champion, I think when he was 11. And so as I remember, we got to go to Orlando, got to go to Disney World for that and the competition. They put us on a bus with like 40 other kids in that 11 to 14 age group. And I thought, wow, here are all these kids that are just like my son that just absolutely love fish. To watch all those guys together, all those little guys together talking about fishing, it was just absolutely crazy. I got a feeling that we were on the same bus together.
I think we might have been. Yeah, I think we might have been. I was definitely there in Orlando. What year was that? I
want to say 2008.
I think you might be right. I think it was. I've got some stuff on the wall. Let me see here. Yeah, because I was the 2008 state champion, so I definitely went that year. So
yeah. They took two state champions from an older group and a younger group, and they all went to Orlando. I think there was a bass, like an amateur tournament that was there also that the kids went to watch. And it was a very cool week.
I've actually got the plaque up on the wall right here behind me from 2008 casting. So that's cool.
It's cool stuff. It's a great program. I feel like it opened the door for a lot of kids to see what the world of fishing was all about. And I just in doing the research, I said, wow, I bet Jacob and his family were on that same bus or one of those same buses that we were on, because they took us to there was a tournament going on. They took us to Orlando, and then they took us to Disney World, and then they also took us to the competition itself. And it was a pretty cool event.
Yeah, they did an amazing job back then. Everything is so well, planned out. And
three seasons on the Major League Fishing Pro Circuit. What would you say is your biggest takeaway? What's the most important thing you've learned being on a pro tour for 3 seasons?
Man, it's a lot more than just catching bass. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, in the off season. There's a lot of work that goes into this sport that goes unseen by the average, guy that's just looking at it from the outside perspective. As far as the fishing goes, it's not really any more difficult than fishing at, your Toyota or your open level. I wouldn't say you've got a, more stiff competition, I'd say overall, but I mean, the ultimate thing is you're competing against yourself no matter what format you're fishing. I mean, it's almost all mental, and it all comes down to your decision making. But if you lose that traction and you lose that confidence, and for some reason you're not trusting your intuition as much, it can really go downhill just as quickly. You can be fishing really well. I mean, you can be, working your bait, properly and picking up the right rods and all that other stuff. But if you're not fishing mentally in the zone, it's like, I definitely have hit some of those peaks and those valleys over the last 3 years. This year, unfortunately, I had a couple of events where I just felt like I wasn't fishing very well. I wasn't fishing, confidently the whole time, the whole event. And that goes a long ways, man. I mean, it's so important to fish your strengths and feel good about what you're doing. And if you're not in that, position, if you're trying to do something that is known on that body of water, or if you're trying to do something you're not super familiar with that should be working there, it just, for some reason, at least for me, it just doesn't seem to work. If I just pick something out that I'm like, hey, there's some grass over there, I know how to fish grass from living on Guntersville for the last 2.5 years, I feel comfortable in the grass. If I just hunker down in that area, I should be able to put something together, rather than thinking like, well, I mean, I'm on this body of water and this should be going on, this should be going on, and this should be going on. And your mind starts going, hey, well, wait a second, this over here is going to be better. Instead of like looking at it, just what's in front of me, you get so caught up in what should be happening. And I don't know, that's a long-winded answer to your question, but really that's the most challenging part as a professional angler, is just being confident and trusting your gut and making decisions like in the heat of the moment when there's a lot of pressure, and being able to adjust smoothly, but also it doesn't have to be the best thing. You don't have to pick the best pattern. You don't have to pick the best bait. You just have to make whatever it is that you're going to do work. And at the end of the day, I mean, you don't need to catch every bass that swims. You just need to catch, for my format, 5, quality fish. So really that's the biggest challenge is staying mentally on top of everything and making the right decisions.
Change. It's inevitable. To improve, you must adapt. The sport is evolving. A paradigm shift is a fundamental change of basic concepts. Don't get left behind. Introducing Paradigm. Paradigm Reels by Duckett Fishing. Pro-driven.
We're talking to Jacob Wall. He was 6th overall in Major League Fishing Bass Pro Circuit points in 2020. 55th in 2019, the first year that you fished the tour. A breakthrough season in 2020, as I said, finishing in 6th place. And then, as we just got through talking about a minute ago, 54th this past season. Learning the pro game, it really goes way, way beyond fishing. If it was just the fishing, there's so many good fishermen in the world, but you find that the ones that can make it are the ones that can make everything work. Talk about some of the bumps along the way this year, because you just got through saying it was not the kind of year you wanted to have. Distractions, what would it be?
I don't know what it was, really. I don't know if there was one, like, I don't know if there's one factor that was, kind of overhanging everything, but I'd say that the majority of it just comes down to just trusting my intuition. Because really, when it comes down to my fishing ability, I mean, I love to fish. I love to catch them, but the biggest thing is finding them and basically putting that pattern together. And I think sometimes, I think in the past few events, I think on the St. Lawrence for sure. I mean, that was a terrible event. I don't even want to go over that. That was awful for me. I literally couldn't finish below 120th place, and I would if I finished 120th or better, I would have made the championship. And I did the absolute worst I've done in a national level event. And so I don't know. I mean, just looking at that one event as a I guess if I'm just looking at that from the outside perspective and trying to gain some insight onto why it wasn't a good tournament for me, I would say that it primarily came down to there were a number of reasons. The long run, I was making a run down to Alexandria Bay, which was, like an hour and 10 minutes. And I wasn't used to making that kind of run. The weather wasn't real good. It was pretty spotty. We got a lot of wind. It was pretty rainy for the first 2 days. That was just a tough event, man. There were a number of factors that I was not super familiar with. I'm still a pretty novice angler as far as it comes to a lot of these fisheries. And I think I just got too caught up in like too many different things, thinking, hey, I need to be over here doing this. I need to be over here doing this. And I couldn't just like narrow my perspective down and slow myself down enough to focus on what was in front of me. I did catch some fish the first day. The second day was just, I don't know what happened, man. I made a decision to stay up the river more, closer to the takeoff, just trying to catch 5 fish and make it to the championship. And I somehow managed to screw that up and only caught 3 bass. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think I don't know if there's one thing. I'd say overall, it's just staying focused and true to myself is going to be the main thing I'm going to take away from the season and go into next year. Just stay true to what I know how to do and what I'm confident and comfortable doing. So.
It occurs to me there's 2 ways that you can go from this. And I mean, really, you kind of hit the nail on the head. You didn't have a bad season. You had a good season. You had a bad tournament. And maybe bad is not explaining it enough, because in your own words, it was pretty tough. But it can go one of two ways. You can look at the way the season went this year and the fact that you did pretty well enough to qualify over 5 of the 6 events. Or you can just dwell on the bad event, and you can take that with you, and that can be something that just crushes you and lets you go. So, you need to look on the brighter side of things. You had a good tour. You had a good tour this year, except for one event. You also talked about fishing intuition. This is a thing that I think is absolutely fascinating. And when I talk to pros, I love to get into what causes them to make decisions. When you talk about intuition, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, going back on what you said about, dwelling on this one event, it's definitely not something I'm going to dwell on, but it is something that I've thought about a lot, and I've tried to I'm more pissed off at it than I am like upset about it, which I think is going to kind of light the fire even stronger just to make me want to do better. I always have really high expectations for myself. I was a little disappointed on about 3 of my events this year. Eufaula wasn't really that good. I got a 90-something place finish there. Murray, I wasn't really happy with that. That was 70-something. I still cut a check, but it was like, just wasn't a good event for me. So I think that you're right. I did have some really good events, and I did start the season off phenomenally over at Okeechobee and then Guntersville. So as a whole, it was a good season. There were just some points that I need to take away from it and learn from, and definitely not dwell on, just use to kind of motivate me for next year. But as far as the intuition goes, I mean, it's just stuff that I've learned over years and years of bass fishing. I mean, the more time you're out there, the more time you're standing on a boat or on the bank or wherever you might be, you're looking at the water, you're looking at the conditions, you're using what's around you to kind of decide what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And so you create these patterns, I guess, so to speak, not necessarily like, hey, I'm going to pick this up this time every time, but it's like you start to see what works in certain scenarios. And so once those scenarios present themselves to you in the tournament, scene, when you're out there on the water, when you've already got a plan, set, like, hey, I'm fishing a smallmouth fishery, I'm drop shotting these rock piles and I'm fishing this depth, but you get out there and hey, the wind starts ripping and you look up on the bank and you go, wow, that shallow little shoal looks good over there. I know I've caught them burning a spinnerbait over stuff like that before. That's like the intuitive stuff I'm talking about, where it's just like, even though you've done something for practice or you've done something for the tournament, even if you have been successful, making those adjustments. I'm watching I was watching the live just before we got on here for the Champlain guys. And I watched Brandon Coulter make the adjustment from punching submerged grass, stuff that was under the water that was still rolled over and canopied. He was punching that, and which we do a lot on Guntersville. Well, he had like some kind of a pollen, or I don't know what it was, but something blew in there and made it really hard for him to see that. So his intuition told him, hey, I need to go punch the stuff where I can see it's matted out. That way I'm not fighting the pollen, trying to see, trying to just randomly flip into a canopied area. So his intuitive move wasn't changing baits. It was just slightly adjusting where he was at. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like being able to adjust like that and just doing it naturally is really the strongest, the best way you can fish. And if you can do that and you can do it smoothly, you're going to be really, well off. You're going to be doing really well. You're going to be catching fish, making, good decision after good decision. There's a number of guys that have had seasons like that. You look at like Michael Neal, you look at Bobby Lane, you look at a bunch of guys that have just been hammering them this year. Those are the guys that are making those decisions and trusting their, intuition and transitioning really smoothly between things.
Well, we have fished a lifetime. You have fished a lifetime. I have fished a lifetime. I venture to say anybody who's watching this has fished a lifetime. And every time you experience something, you don't lose it. It gets in yourself, back there in your subconscious. And I find that when I'm doing the best, and I'm sure you probably agree with this, is when those little voices are talking to you and you're responding to them. It's when we start to doubt those voices that we get spun out and we get in trouble, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, like if you, it's a weird thing because you kind of know when to like tell a voice to shut up and just like step back, but you also have to know when it's like, hey, that might be something like I need to look into that. So Yeah, I agree. Trusting those voices and going with those voices, but sometimes you got so many different things going in your head that it's like you got to be able to sift through it and quickly and choose something that's going to really be productive. And so that's where, like if you see a guy that maybe he's got a lot of experience, that's been doing it for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden he has a bad year. It's like, wait a second, I thought this guy knew these fisheries. I thought he knew how to, these are the same bass. Well, it's like you got so much stuff firing up here that if you can't sift through it the right way, so I agree with you though. I think, I don't know. It's almost like somehow when you're doing well, you just know what is the right decision and what's not. I don't know how else to explain it other than you just know. You just make the call and you just know.
It's what intuition is. So now you have done what I think is the impossible, because I haven't seen it done before. You have brought the golden arches into professional bass fishing. This is fascinating to me. Tell us about your McDonald's sponsorship. What do you do for them? What do they do for you? How did McDonald's and bass fishing come together? Because I mean, for years I thought it made sense. Dudes go fishing, they get off the lake and they need to eat something. It just seemed like fast food and bass fishing made sense. You've pulled it together though. How did you do that? What's that all about?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate enough to have actually a close family friend of mine. Actually it's my mom's uncle. I'm trying to think. How am I related to him? It's basically through family. Mike Retzer and Mike Retzer Jr., they own a bunch of the Retzer family. Essentially, they own a whole bunch of McDonald's throughout the South. They're actually the largest. I don't know how far into this. I don't think it matters if I say this. I think it's pretty well known, but they're the largest single owners of McDonald's. They own more McDonald's, I think, in the world than any single person does or any family does. And so I think they own McDonald's in Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, a whole bunch of states in the South. And essentially I reached out to him this year and said, hey, I know I've talked to him over the past few years and we've kind of had a relationship, and they helped me out, as kind of a gift thing last year, just with a little bit of money for entry fees and stuff. And then this year I just basically reached out and said, hey, I'm doing this, and I know you guys are based, in Arkansas, and I thought it'd be cool if we could kind of partner up. It's a cool deal. I definitely like supporting, family, and I like having, family support me. And I basically thought it'd be a good opportunity for the both of us. I still need to grow on it and try to expand what we're going to do and sort of how we're going to work together. But it's definitely, there's a lot of potential with it, I think, for both ends of the party.
Well, from the business standpoint, okay, so we see a company like Bridgeford, for example. Bridgeford Foods is heavily invested in bass fishing. They have seen the connection. The fishing demographic is one of the largest demographics there is in the outdoor world, and they jump on it. And I mean, I just see you as, not necessarily having to do anything, just the fact that you've got those arches on your boat and on your jersey, it just brings a connection. I mean, as a fan of bass fishing, when I see a company that is not a tackle company that is associating with the sport I love, boy, it grabs me. So I think just walking around with the golden arches on your jersey is a big deal right there. I also see that is located right next to that Major League Fishing logo, and they're right there. That can bring a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I would think that Major League Fishing would look at that and say, hey, Jacob, how do we get together with these guys? That to me would be a bridge, because, of course, Major League Fishing, like any tournament organization, is to bringing these companies into the industry. So I just, when I saw that on your boat and when I saw that on your jersey, I thought, wow, that's a big deal. And it's a connection that no one has been able to unlock to this point. McDonald's maybe is not a company, McDonald's corporate maybe is not a company that has seen itself in this light before, but wow, they've got a connection now. And what a great ambassador you are, and what a great opportunity for both sides.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a really good opportunity. I've been, like I said, extremely fortunate to have that connection. It just happened to be that, basically it was basically a connection through family. And that's how a lot of these relationships with these companies that you see, guys, like certain guys, I mean, I'm not going to name names or name companies, but certain guys might be with a company where, like, if another guy, for example, even just if I were to reach out to that company and try to get a hold of somebody, that's not even something that they're, like you said, McDonald's, for example. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start if I didn't have the family connection.
Exactly.
And so it's a really good opportunity for me. And like you said, I mean, it's a good opportunity for them too. There's definitely a lot of room to kind of expand upon it. And I'm just going to kind of keep running with it and building the relationship and trying to create, a great platform for the both of us. Cause that's essentially what I want to do. I want to be able to do this for as long as I can and maintain at this level of this sport. And, it's a great opportunity for me, and it's a great opportunity for McDonald's to get their name. I mean, they're already really, really well known, but I mean, like you said, I mean, the fishing community is huge. You've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people that go fishing every single week, probably every day. I mean, so all these people are going out and grabbing breakfast or whatever it might be, or grabbing lunch after they get off. And so it's a huge demographic to market to, and I think it's a good point you're making.
Did you pursue? I mean, I in college there are college athletes now that are literally majoring in bass fishing. It's the fishing part of it, but there's also a business aspect of it as well. Did you study business in college or these kinds of things?
I didn't study business. I actually I studied product design, and
Okay.
I studied fine art. So I'm really more interested in, like, the designing, like, of the product, or the, I market, because I market myself. I'm basically selling myself as an individual, as a representative for these companies. I did take a few business courses in school, but that wasn't something that I, like, majored in or minored in. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, if I were to, like, give advice to a college or high school angler that's coming into the sport, that wants to do it at a professional level, I would definitely say, like, take school seriously and do some sort of a business or, course or program, whether you're minoring it or majoring it. It's something that's going to get your, wheels turning in that kind of marketing, aspect of the sport, because a lot of it comes down to, like, how you can speak, how you can represent yourself, the image that you provide, the platform. There's so much more to it than just the fishing, like we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talk about now. It seems like professional fishing has evolved in recent years, not just fishing, not just working with sponsors, but content creation, YouTube channels, Instagram, that kind of stuff. It's all part of it, right? And talk about how you've approached that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, you've got, like you said, YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook. I mean, you've got all your social media, and it's expanding the reaches from, for a bass angler. It's expanding the reaches for the marketing for a bass angler. Essentially, before, you had your stage presence, you had your live coverage, you might have your, televised shows of your tournaments. And essentially that was it, before social media really became a big deal. And the amount of reaches that you have through Instagram or through YouTube is endless compared to, being on a stage in front of who knows how many people, that's getting aired to who knows how many people. Instagram is a great platform to basically market yourself and to create a image for yourself that you can basically use to, you use it to market for your sponsors. And that's essentially what I've done. And I don't know, my phone just popped up with something, but essentially what I've done is I've taken I've taken my Instagram and I've tried to build it over the last 3 years. I've tried to, expand my reaches. It's a very difficult thing to grow. I mean, you don't hear very many of these guys talk about how difficult it is to grow a following on Instagram, or how difficult it is to grow a following on YouTube. It's very, very difficult. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not something that's going to happen in a year. It's probably not something that's going to happen in 2 years, at least for me. I always have to work hard for everything that I get. And Instagram, social media, YouTube, it's no different. I mean, I've got, I think, close to 9,000 followers now on Instagram, which I've worked so hard to get that. Yeah. A couple years ago, I had like 1,500, 2,000. Basically, last year, I just spent like every waking moment that I wasn't fishing on Instagram, liking, commenting, posting, following. I mean, I don't have anybody doing it for me. So it's just countless hours of my own work, just sitting there, just sifting through, just trying to create like this interactive profile, trying to create a name that people like recognize, oh, hey, this guy's commenting on this stuff. Let me look at his page. Because it's an endless link. You can go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. So it's like, if you see this guy, Jacob Wall, commenting and you go, oh, well, he's got a big fish in his photo, or oh, he's got a pro angler, and click on that. It's like you basically just try to get your name out there. You don't need to, like I said, grow a following like that. It's not like you do a giveaway and you get 8,000, followers or subscribers. Right. There's a lot more work involved in it, a lot more behind the scenes. And I'm sure that that's not the best way to go about it. That's just the way that I did. I like to, I like to do stuff my own way. And so that's kind of how I grew my following, but it's so important. I mean, I'd say YouTube right now is probably one of the most important things. It's just such a good way to show people sort of your demeanor, the way that you fish, the way that you, at least in the fishing world, the way that you fish, the way that you interact with people on the boat. It's a good way for people to get a read on you as a person. You get a lot more out of YouTube, I think, than you do out of Instagram. Instagram, you can kind of put on a facade a little bit. YouTube, you get to really get a view into somebody's personality, and I do a lot of collaborative, videos with my buddy Mikey, and I just did one with fishing with Nordby, or Andrew Nordby.
Oh, Andrew, yeah.
Yeah, so I like to do those kind of deals where I fish with other people. They do videos, because it gives, puts a good light on me, and it helps them because I'm doing this professionally. So it looks good when they've got a professional angler on there, but then it's good for me, for my sponsors, to show these people like, hey, like, I'm going to hop on the boat with this guy and go fishing and do this. And I'm going to talk about, so it's a great platform for basically promoting yourself.
Yeah.
Without trying to sound too selfish or anything, but I mean, you got to kind of put yourself, you got to try to build your brand as best you can. And with today's day and age, it's such an important, aspect of it.
Well, it's kind of interesting because I look at BASS and I look at Major League Fishing, and what those two organizations do, and the National Professional Fishing League, don't want to leave those guys out. But what these companies do, what these associations do, is they create business opportunities for people like yourself. And you have to promote yourself because you are the business. You're a franchise of these organizations, and you have to promote yourself. And I don't think anybody looks at that negatively. It's what is expected. Now, personally, I can't get enough YouTube content. I watch it constantly. And when people like yourself put this stuff out, it's just one more thing for me to watch. And I know I'm not unique that way. I think there's thousands, if not millions, of people that feel the same way. Now, what I wanted to ask you about also is that you're involved in lure making. Talk about that. Is that, do you have a lure company that you're working on? I mean, are you building lures yourself? Is that something that we might see in the future?
Yeah, so the stuff that I've done currently up to this point has not been like really like large scale. It's been more small, kind of like garage stuff, like actually not a garage. It's out of this room I'm sitting in right here. It's kind of my all-purpose fishing room. And that's part of the reason why I haven't been doing it over the last about a year. It's a small space. I'm really, really like crunched for time with all the tournament stuff and trying to prepare for the season. And then once the season starts, staying focused on the season. But yeah, it's something that I love to do, carve baits out of wood. I'm trying to see if I've got anything floating around here. Here we go. I got stuff up here on the wall. Here's like a little, like, I carved that all out of wood. That's like a herring or like a shiner kind of imitation. I haven't even jointed it yet, but I love making stuff. Like I said, I got my degree in product design and fine art. So this is like kind of my little side hobby is carving. And I have sold a number of these baits that I've made. And I did it more for fun and trying to, get out something that I thought was cool into a few other guys' hands. And then I love seeing them catch fish on stuff that I've made. Currently working with Gambler and Nishine, the company, and Savage Gear. I work with all those lure companies, and so they're very open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Gambler is Val, the owner of Gambler, super, super cool guy, really, really open to like designing new baits and coming up with new ideas. And so he's got a new program too. It's all on his computer that he can kind of like digitally like make these designs. And so Val and I kind of throw ideas back and forth.
Good.
And definitely I think in the future, we're going to be, designing some new baits.
This segment is brought to you in part by Swim Baits Plus. Are you looking for that hard to find swim bait? Are you looking for that impossible rare color? Are you looking for great prices? Visit them on Instagram at @SwimBaitsPlus. We are talking to third-year Major League Fishing Pro Circuit tour angler Jacob Wall, and we've gone through a number of things. I want to pick your brain from a personal level right now because it is the dead of summer. I do go to my local lake, and the bass are starting to chase shad all over the place, and they're boiling on the surface. And I throw top water and top water and top water, and they don't bite. I think a lot of time when these fish come up and boil, what you're actually seeing is them heading back down because they came up and they went straight back down.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, they're up. So throw a topwater lure, and it's just, you might hit where they just were, but they just were, and they're not there now. Sure. I'm wondering how you approach summertime schooling fish.
So, I mean, there's a number of different approaches. I know here on Gunnersville, when they go to blowing up out on the ledges and stuff, I can catch them on a topwater if I time it like perfectly. If you make that cast, you lead those fish. More or less, you're picking one fish that's chasing an individual bait, and you're just trying to intersect that fish with that bait and hit it right in front of it. It can be so difficult to do that efficiently. A 5-inch or 4-inch flutter spoon is a really good technique. You throw it over there where they've been blowing up, and you kind of just free fall it, because a lot of the times it mimics a bait fish that just got crashed on and is dying off. So a flutter spoon on Gunnersville works really good in those blowing up fish if you can kind of get it in there and let it fall through them. I would assume it might work the same where you're at.
Oh yeah, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. One thing that people don't really think about that often is that oftentimes in the summertime, water kind of stratifies in these big reservoirs, and when it stratifies, you get different levels of oxygen, you get different temperatures, you get water levels where the fish are more comfortable because there's better oxygen content and the water's cooler. That's where they want to be. But when we see them up on the surface, they're just up there to eat, and then they go back down to where they want to be. So like you said, a flutter spoon, it's a great idea. It's a great idea. And it's probably not what most people are going to think about when they see these fish busting on the surface. They're going to think about, hey, you got to fish the top water. But a lot of times these fish are already headed back down to where it's more comfortable. So if you were going to fish a flutter spoon, for example, how would you approach it? Talk about the gear, the rod, the reel, the line, even the bait. How would you approach it?
Yeah, so I'm not affiliated with any companies that make a spoon. So, I mean, I pretty much just go out and buy what I want and what I like. Mm-hmm. And I started out the last couple of years throwing the Strike King, like Sexy Spoon. They make like a 4, and I think they make a 5. The 4 is actually a really good bait. It's smaller than what most flutter spoons that most guys throw. It's it's real compact. It's only 4 inches, but it's not real wide either.
Bait size.
Yeah, it's a great like threadfin shad size. It's just the perfect little threadfin size. So that's a good spoon. Another good bait is the Nichols. I think it's just a regular 5-inch flutter spoon. Any of those patterns, I don't think it matters. I like the shattered glass or like the broken kind of up pattern, kind of metallic-y pattern. As far as line goes, I wouldn't go any lighter than about 15. You start getting lighter than 15, and it's like when you snap that spoon off the bottom and hop it off the bottom, you're just imparting too much pressure and too much of a jerk when you pull on it, to where if you had 12 or something, I mean, if you had nicked it a little bit on the way down on a rock, or if you hit something on the way down and then say you go to rip and you hit a fish, if you hit that fish on the way up and it's got a little nick in your 12-pound line, it might, you could easily bust it off. So 15, 16, I use 16 most of the time, like some Sunline, FC. And then rod, I like a longer rod. I throw like a 7'8", medium heavy, something long enough to where you're going to be able to get a bunch of line off the bottom when you go to rip it, but soft enough too to where when you hook a fish, it's a medium heavy, so it's going to load up and get that treble hooking that fish really good. Reel doesn't really matter, 7 or 8, something medium to quick. You don't want a slow gear ratio because you're trying to basically just pick up slack between rips of the spoon. But essentially the way I fish it is, if you're seeing schooling fish, I'd throw it out there in the middle of them, and I would open up, your bail and just kind of free fall it through the school. A lot of times those fish will just dunk it on the way down. You just feel them pop it, and basically you just reel into them and lean into them real quick. But if they don't hit it on the initial fall, you let it kind of free fall all the way to the bottom. And even if they're on the surface, I almost always let it go to the bottom. I have way better success that way. And then I'll just reel down the slack and then just kind of grab the butt of my rod with one hand and the reel, rip it off the bottom like this. And basically you just follow it back down to the bottom. I think one of the common misconceptions with the spoon is, you rip and then you reel and then you rip. Well, the problem when you reel, when you go down, is you're taking out all the slack that you just pulled out. So you want to pull it, your slack out, and then you just want to let it suck back down to the bottom. And then once it hits, you reel a little bit and then you pull it. So it's all about cadence with that spoon. And it's just sort of a feeling that you get, but it's one of those deals where when you pull it, that spoon's coming 5, 6, 7 feet up off the bottom. It's getting way up in the strike zone, wherever those fish might be, whatever water depth it is. I mean, you could even rip it. And then if you want to get it higher up in the water, you can reel down really quick and rip it again and get that thing 15 feet up off the bottom if you're fishing in 20 or 25 feet.
Yeah.
And really work that water column really, really good. It's something that requires a little bit of, time on the water, a little bit of, time doing it. And once you get a couple bites doing it, you kind of get a feel for it.
Yeah.
It's a weird deal, man. It'll trigger fish even when they don't want to bite most other moving baits.
Best day I've ever had fishing, schooling fish like that in the summertime was in Arizona Lake, at Lake Alamo. Partner and I we couldn't get him any other way. We finally started throwing Castmaster spoons at him. And It was like, it didn't stop. So I think you're spot on with that. That's a great way to attack them, especially when they're coming down. Jacob, what does the rest of the year look like for you? I mean, the pro circuit is done. What's the rest of the year look like?
So I'm sort of right now I'm in the kind of in between time where I'm starting to kind of transition all the stuff that I've currently got. I'm going to be working on getting involved with a boat company. I've been talking to a couple different companies, and so I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to be doing for next year as far as the boat or the ride goes. But basically, just a lot of gear prep, and then just the relations with my sponsors. Updating everybody, making sure everybody's on the same page, and just contacting everyone. And I'll probably be carving some baits and maybe selling some one-offs or two at a time or something, baits that I might make. I enjoy doing that. It's fun. I don't hunt, so I guess when my slow season is, I like to make baits. I fish a lot of local derbies too.
Yeah.
I'll jump in some weekend, open deals and that kind of stuff. But yeah, pretty much just a big, just preparation for next year. Just make sure everything's ready to go.
Well, it sounds good. Jacob, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I feel like every time I interview somebody that I don't know, I feel like I've made a new friend, and look forward to watching how things go the rest of the way. Let us know how the boat deal goes. We'd like to be able to help you get that word out once you find out. Thanks for being with us today.
Keith, I appreciate it. And I agree. I agree with this, with becoming a friend with whoever you talk to, and I've enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. And so hopefully you have a good one. And thanks for the invite on.
All right. We'll talk to you again real soon. Take care.
All right.